Yo, what's up everybody? This is the Flamehead 97 here. And here today, guys, I'm here for another best albums of list. And this time, it's going to be for best albums of 2003. Got a pretty good list here. Of course, I can't include everything, so once this goes out to YouTube, there will be some honorable mentions. So, just wanted to get that out of the way. So, let's go and get started, guys. So, the first album in the list is going to be The Long Road by Nickelback. This is a really good Nickelback album. This is one of their heavier albums because later on in their career they went kind of more towards more radio-friendly direction with some of their songs. But on this album, it's got a lot of heavy songs like Because of You, Figured You Out, Should Have Listened. Of course, Someday was on this album. See You at the Show. So yeah, there's a lot of good songs on this album, and I definitely think that's one of Nickelback's best albums as well. So I had to put it on here because it's one of the best rock albums of 2003. Definitely a good album here from Nickelback. So the next album is going to be Jackpot by rapper Chingy. Definitely good stuff by Chingy. He had a lot of good songs on here like Right There, of course Holiday Inn featuring Ludacris and Snoop Dogg. That was a dope song. And just many other good songs on this album. So Jackpot by Chingy, definitely included here because it's definitely a good rap and hip hop album. Good stuff, Chingy, here on this album. So the next album on the list is going to be Chocolate Factory by R. Kelly. This album had some good songs like Snake. And another good song on here was, of course, Ignition, the original version. And then the Ignition remix was also on this album. So it's pretty cool that both the original and remix appear on the same album. That doesn't always happen. But this album that happened, I think that's pretty cool. So, Chocolate Factory by R. Kelly. Good album here. Next album is Street Dreams by rapper Fabulous. This is definitely a good album. One of his best albums for sure. Had a lot of good songs like Into You with Ashanti. He also had the other version of that same song with Tamia. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. Of course, Can't Let You Go is on this album, so Street Dreams by Fabulous. Definitely really good stuff here. And I think Fabulous is kind of a underrated rapper, so yeah, this album, definitely lots of good stuff on it. Next album is The Unbreakables by 3 6 Mafia. Of course, you guys already know I'm a big fan of 3 6 Mafia. So, had to include this here. This is a really dope album. So The Unbreakables, you had a lot of good stuff on it, like Bin Laden, Fuck That Shit, Testing My Gangsta. You even had You Scared Part 2 on here, which was originally a DJ Paul song, but it was reworked into a sequel for 3 6 Mafia and their album, The Unbreakables. So, The Unbreakables, I'm definitely including this album, because this is a dope album. And an album that I grew up to, so Unbreakables, of course, makes the list. Next album is Faceless by Godsmack. This is a great Godsmack album. This is my all-time favorite album from Godsmack. Yes, it's true they got other good albums, but Faceless is my favorite album from them. I think it's their best album that they've ever made. A lot of good songs like the title track Faceless, of course, the song I Stand Alone, Realign, Serenity. So, this album, definitely for any fan of heavier music, and just music in general, because this album is awesome, and just one of the best metal and rock albums of the 2000s. So, the next album is Elephunk by the Black Eyed Peas. Definitely really good stuff here. This is one of my favorite albums from the Black Eyed Peas. Definitely be in my top 3 albums from Black Eyed Peas. Definitely good stuff. You had songs like Shut Up was on this album, of course. Hey Mama was on here. The Boogie That Be, which is one of my favorites on the album. Definitely an underrated song. Of course, Let's Get It Started was on here. And then Where's the Love with Justin Timberlake. That's also on Ella Funk. So this album had its hits. And also more underrated songs as well. So Ella Funk, definitely good stuff. Next album is Frail Words Collapse by As I Lay Dying. Good metalcore album here. Yes, they got better albums, but I still thought Frail Words Collapse was a good album, so I'm going to include it on here. I don't remember any song names in particular because it's been a while, honestly, since I've listened to anything from this album, to be exact. But I'm still going to include it here because I liked the album and I still thought it was a good album. So, Frail Words Collapse, good metalcore album from As I Lay Dying, even though it's not one of their best. Next album is Mud on the Tires by country singer Brad Paisley, and this album had a lot of good songs like, of course, the title track Mud on the Tires. Alison Krauss was on the song, or on this album as well, on the song Whiskey and Lullaby. I think Celebrity was also on this album. So, Mud on the Tires, definitely good country stuff from Brad Paisley. Next album is the self-titled album by 3 D's Grace. I love this album. It's another great album from 2003, especially when you're mentioning rock and metal music. So yeah, the self-titled album by 3 D's Grace, definitely one of their best. This is, of course, from the Adam Gautier era, and the original 3 D's Grace. So you had a lot of good songs on here, like Just Like You, I Hate Everything About You, Home, one of my favorite 3 D's Grace songs in general, great song. Overrated was a good closing track on here. So the self-titled album just has a lot of good stuff. So I'm putting it in here, of course. Good album by 3 D's Grace. Next album is Trap Music by T.I. You guys already know this album's going to be here. Big fan of T.I. Grew up to his music. A lot of good stuff is on this album. Like title track Trap Music 24s is on this album. Of course, Rubber Band Man was on here. T.I. versus T.I.P. I Still Love You. Bezel. Just a lot of good stuff on Trap Music by T.I. Good album. For sure. So, T.I.'s Trap Music. Of course, this album makes the list, as I already mentioned. Because this is one of the best rap and hip-hop albums of 2003. So, of course, I'm putting it here. Good album. Next album is Dance of Death by Iron Maiden. I really like this album. I know the album cover is horrible. One of the worst metal and rock album covers of all time. But that doesn't take anything away from the album itself. Because it's a good album. This is another album, honestly, where I don't remember song names. But I do remember the song Wildest Dreams was on this album. I think the album also had a title track. Those are only song names I remember by heart from Dance of Death by Iron Maiden, because it's been a while, as I'm saying, since I've listened to anything from this album in particular, but I still thought it was a good album, and one of their more underrated albums as well. So, definitely a good album here from Iron Maiden. Next album is going to be Results May Vary by Limp Bizkit. Yes, this album gets some hate from critics all alike, but I thought it was a good album. Behind Blue Eyes was on this album. They also had Snoop Dogg on one of the songs. And I thought this album was pretty good. I don't get the hate for this album. If people don't like it, I respect their opinion. As long as they respect my opinion, because I like the album. Because I didn't think it was bad like people said it was. Yes, Limp Bizkit isn't for everyone. But I still thought this album had solid material on it. So I'm going to include it here because I don't think this is a bad album at all. Next album is going to be Chicken and Beer by rapper Ludacris, of course, another rapper I'm a big fan of. Also grew up with his music. It's like I did with T.I. So, of course, Chicken and Beer is going to make this list. Really good album here. He had songs like Stand Up, We Got was on this album. Of course, another good song on here was the song, damn, well, oh yeah, Splash Waterfalls. That was the name of the song. So Splash Waterfalls was on Chicken and Beer. So yeah, Chicken and Beer, just a dope album, and one of Luda's best albums for sure. So I got included on here because a lot of these songs bring back a lot of good memories to me. Very nostalgic. Good album in general, though, for sure. So Chicken and Beer, of course, makes the list. Next album is Ember to Inferno by the band Trivium. Not one of their best albums, but I still thought it was a good debut album. At the time for Trivium, it was a good album. They had better albums throughout their discography, but I'm still going to give them credit on their debut, Ember to Inferno, because it was definitely a dope album from these guys. And just brought early metalcore into the scene, and this is a good album still, even though they got better material throughout their discography. I still thought Ember to Inferno deserved a place here, because it's a good album. So the next album is going to be the self-titled album by the band Devil Driver. Big fan of these guys. I think they're an underrated metal band. They don't really get the attention that they deserve when it comes to their music overall. But I still think they got a lot of good songs. I think self-titled album is definitely one of their best efforts, because later on in their career, while the music ain't bad, it's not been as good as their older material, but self-titled album definitely one of their best. You got songs like Swingin' the Dead on this album. Of course, Sneak Deep was here. Devil's Son, many other good songs. So I put in this album here because it's one of the best metal rock albums of 2003, once again. Good album. Next album is going to be the Black Album by Jay-Z. This is pretty much the album where Jay-Z said he was going to retire, but he ended up coming up with another album 3 years later in 2006 called Kingdom Come. But yeah, the Black Album, definitely good songs are on here. You got songs like Change Clothes, of course, Throw It On Your Shoulder, which is one of my favorite Jay-Z songs in general. That was on this album, the Black Album. So yeah, the Black Album, definitely a classic for sure when it comes to Jay-Z and just hip-hop in general. It's one of the best albums of the 2000s. Good stuff. Next album is going to be In the Zone by Britney Spears. This was a really good album. Of course, you had the big hit Toxic. The song Every Time was on this album. The Ying Yang Twins were on this album on one of the songs. Madonna was on this album. So you had a lot of good songs on this album from Britney Spears. Definitely one of her best albums, especially in her 2000s career. Good album. Next album on the list is Take a Look in the Mirror by Korn. I know the band themselves aren't really the biggest fan of this album. They say it's their worst album, but I don't agree with that. It's got a lot of good songs like Play Me with Nas was on here. Of course, Did My Time, Break Some Off. So, Take a Look in the Mirror by Korn. It's not a bad album like the band thinks it is, or any of the critics, because I think it's a good album and very underrated. One of their more underrated albums. It's a good album. Don't deserve the hate that it gets, because I like the album. It's very good. So next album on the list is going to be The Diary of Alicia Keys by Alicia Keys. Good album here from Alicia Keys. If I Didn't Have You was on this album, or If I Ain't Got You was on this album. Diary was on this album. Karma. So, got a lot of good stuff on The Diary of Alicia Keys by Alicia Keys. Definitely very good and amazing R&B album for sure. So, I had to put it here, guys, on the list. Next album is Get Rich or Die Trying by 50 Cent. Of course, this was a massive album for 50 Cent. So, yeah, you had a lot of good songs on here, like In the Club, of course, one of his most well-known hits. Good song. Of course, 21 Questions featuring Nate Dogg was on this album. R.I.P. Nate Dogg, definitely a legend. Great song. One of my favorites. 50 Cent. Good song. I think Eminem was on a song on this album called Patiently Waiting. That was a dope song. So yeah, Get Rich or Die Trying, of course. This album makes the list. I can't forget about this album because it's one of the biggest albums of all time across any genre. So yeah, I'm putting it here, guys, because this is really good stuff here. So, Get Rich or Die Trying by 50 Cent, of course, makes the list. Good album. So, the next album on the list is Meteora by Linkin Park. R.I.P. Chester Bennington. Definitely an amazing talent. Gone way too soon. But, yeah, Meteora, definitely an amazing album. One of the best new metal albums of all time. Just a lot of good stuff on this album, like Numb, Somewhere I Belong, Lying From You, From the Inside. So, you had a lot of amazing songs on this album. So, Meteor by Linkin Park, good album. So, I'm putting it here because I love this album and brings back a lot of great memories to me. So, Meteor by Linkin Park, amazing album. So, the final album on the main list is going to be Dangerously in Love by Beyonce. I love this album. One of my favorite R&B albums of all time. Just a really good album. You had songs like Crazy in Love with Jay-Z, Naughty Girl, That's How You Like It with Jay-Z, Me, Myself, and I, Signs featuring Missy Elliott, and just many other good songs. So, Dangerously in Love, it's an amazing album by Beyonce, and I think it's a great first solo album for Beyonce because at this time she was still part of Destiny's Child, but she did release her first and solo album, Dangerously in Love, in 2003, so yeah, definitely an amazing album, one of her best. So, yeah guys, this will be my list for the best albums of 2003. I know I couldn't include everything, like I mentioned earlier on in the video, so for those reasons, I'll have some honorable mentions once this goes to YouTube. Let me know y'all's favorite albums of 2003 and all that good stuff, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.